we'll move on to cover Enterococcus, which was formerly a member of the group D Streptococci. There's not so much we need to cover, so this video will be a quick one, but let's start by thinking about the name, Enterococcus. Entero clues us in that it inhabits our intestinal tract, and coccus is especially important to pay attention to so that you don't inadvertently confuse Enterococcus, the gram-positive cocci, with a completely different bacteria, Enterobacter, which is a gram-negative rod. I've done it a few too many times. So to make sure that you don't confuse the two, we'll base the whole scene around coccus and title it Protest at the Caucus. A little play on words there. So here it is. Here's the protest in front of the caucus, specifically the California caucus. Before I talk about why it's a California caucus, let's draw this dude standing alone out in front of the crowd holding a sign. There are two species in the Enterococcus genus that we should know. There's E. faecalis and E. faecium. Faecalis is represented by the mass of people underneath the California caucus sign. Faecium is represented by the protester in the foreground holding the sign that says "Stop the Fees." Fees for faecium. And California for faecalis. Since there are so many more people in faecalis and fewer people in faecium, you'll remember that faecalis is more common. So faecium occurs less often, but it's kind of a superbug that causes more serious problems. So we've made the protester in the foreground a little buffer to remind you that faecium is more dangerous. But both Enterococci are pretty tough cookies. They're able to grow in mediums of up to 6.5% sodium chloride. To represent this, we'll play on the whole resist the 1% Wall Street protests, but write resist the 6.5% Northern California, again meaning it can grow in 6.5% sodium chloride. Okay, so since the guy up front is more dangerous, we'll stick a police officer on him. Notice the police officer is trying to hit him with a billy club, but he's resisting being hit by the billy club. We may go so far as to say he's showing that he's billy resistant. As you may have guessed, we're trying to communicate that Enterococcus is bile resistant. And just to make this doubly clear, we'll add the bile-resistant boots that Strep viridans had in our previous video. Now we're at my favorite part of the sketch because I think it's ridiculously clever. We're going to cover 3 of the main infections of Enterococcus in one symbol. The protesters are holding a sign that says, "Do you heart trees?" The U stands for urinary tract infections, which we've colored yellow. The heart stands for endocarditis, and the tree stands for infections of the biliary tree. Remember, since Enterococcus is insoluble in bile, it can colonize and infect our biliary tree. Now we're adding the most important piece of information that needs to stick with you, and one of the only reasons why we have to know Enterococcus. Enterococcus, specifically E. faecium, is a nosocomial infection that is resistant to almost every antibiotic we have, even vancomycin. In these cases, you'll hear the bacteria referred to as VRE, for vancomycin-resistant Enterococcus. To show this, we'll draw our vancomycin van, a police van, and show one of our E. faecium buff dudes resisting being thrown in the van, or vancomycin resistant. So then what do you go for if you can't use a beta-lactam or a vancomycin to treat VRE? Well, you can use this. Yeah, this line, police line. Well, line stands for linezolid, a very expensive big gun IV antibiotic. Alternatively, you can use another expensive big gun antibiotic, tigecycline, which we'll represent by painting the next section of the police line with tiger stripes. So treat it with either tigecycline or linezolid. And that's it. A perfect level of detail that you should know for Enterococcus.